Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
Dean Webb, he is the master of so many things, but the most important thing he does is he makes sure that everything at Faith Farm is running properly, and that's a big job. But for those of you who don't know what Faith Farm really is, I'm going to let Dean tell you in a very short little elevator speech what it does, and then we're going to get on to some other interesting aspects.
Okay, Faith Farm, last October we celebrated our 65th anniversary. 65 years we've been changing lives. And we're a free, faith-based, 445-bed drug and alcohol recovery located on a total of 1,600 acres spread between Fort Lauderdale, a 13-acre tract, a 90-acre tract in Palm Beach County at Boynton Beach, and 1,500 acres up in Okeechobee. And it's a 9-month residential program. It's volunteer. We have up to 17 judges that will sentence people to recovery if he's tired of seeing them get incarcerated over and over again. Give them an option, because we're faith-based. They can't sentence them here, but they give them an option to come in lieu of incarceration, and they do that. And we have 20 beds for women on the Boynton campus, and the other 425 beds are the men scattered between the three campuses.
So how many times a week do you tell that to people? A lot, I'll bet.
Well, a lot. It's not as concise. I'd like to get it more concise, but there's so many facets that are important. The free is really critical, because that allows us. In the last 5 years, we've drawn from all 50 states and 8 foreign countries. So the word free is really important, because most people have to spend $1,000 a day for a treatment center down here on the nice beach house, but in Palm Beach. But free is important. The fact that it's a long-term program is important. A lot of people don't want to spend that much time, but I always tell them, my God, you didn't get addicted in 9 months. You spent a long time on your addiction. Why wouldn't you spend 9 months to transform your life? So and the fact that we have 3 campuses are important. We have a zero tolerance policy. If somebody uses, they get kicked out. They can wait 30 days and then reapply. And that's by the way, I spent most of my morning this morning talking to both my director of the Boynton campus and the women's director, because they had to kick people out for using. And that just, we have our arms wide open. Whosoever will may come. We want to change your life. And it's just really hard when people, I don't know why they do it, will use, and they know we've got a zero tolerance policy. And Friday, Troy was in my office with tears in his eyes. He said, Dean, I've got 2 guys that just tested positive. And he says, and it just tears me up. Well, one's an older guy, but the other guy is only 20 years old. He said, if he gets kicked out, he starts an 8-year prison sentence. And this fork in his life, compared to if he did not use and stayed here, and he said the difference in his life 8 years down the road between spending that time incarcerated in prison versus 9 months at Faith Farm and then whatever else he does, because we help people get jobs and work and all that stuff. He said that gap between that path, he said, is just tearing me up. He said, I've got to do it, because we can't lose control of the program, because we take up the convicted felons even in our program. So we have to run a tight ship, as they say in the Navy. And so, but it's just gut-wrenching. I mean, I had some of the women in the program came to me yesterday. They were complaining that the director was unfair because she was treating this one girl. But I said, you got to understand, that director you're accusing came to me last week crying in my office and said, the girl used, I need to kick her out, but I know in my spirit, in my heart of hearts, if I put her on the street, she'll die. I've got to try and find another place. I have to comply with the zero tolerance policy of Faith Farm. But I, honest to God, need to find someplace. She said, because I just can't set her out. She'll die. And so everybody was saying she was being unfair to coddle her and get her another place. So, I said, the Bible never talks about being fair. It only talks about being just. And I said, what she did, she acted justly to help that woman. And I said, my kid, 2 daughters growing up, Daddy, that's not fair. You did that. I said, I tell my girls, I said, I'm not obligated scripturally to be fair. I'm obligated to be just. And what I did was just. And, of course, they're in their 40s now, and they come back and say, they'll tell me about different decisions I made and say, yeah, I can see why you did that now that I'm a wife and mother, and, I can understand that now that I've got kids. So I said, don't judge this lady. I don't criticize her for doing the just thing. She had a life in her hands.
So I have a question. Where do these people, when they're on the farm, where do they find the drugs?
Well, we had a guy that was came in from prison, accepted felon, and he came in and he had some pills, and he started passing them around. And when people take them and act funny, we'll do random drug tests, and because we can't allow that stuff to permeate the farm, it's really sad. I issued a thing that says now that we have to not strip search, but make them empty out their pockets
say that,
and all
right.
that stuff.
You should do that, right? Okay. Well, my other question or my other discussion is there may be people who come, and they're not taking alcohol anymore, but they may be bipolar. Do you still take them because they have medication?
It depends on the medication. If it's a psychotropic drug, most recent example was at Fort Lauderdale last week. They said there's a guy waiting out to apply to come in the program, and the guy went out there and he came out and he said, no, there's not a guy out there, it's a woman. They said, no, that's him. And the mother and daughter had brought the mother's son and the daughter's brother in, and he was a full-blown, big-chested woman, and wanted to check in the program. So he'd filled out the paperwork and all that, and we did not accept him. And so the mother says, I know you're doing it because you're discriminating because he's transgender. And the director says, no, I have two reasons. Number one, I don't have an open bed right now. All our beds are full. And the other reason, he's on a drug that we don't have any. We're a church. We don't have any medical doctors or nurses to monitor that, and we don't accept people that are on any psychological or psychotropic drugs. We just have a policy against that because we don't want to endanger them, because we have ministers. We don't have doctors. So we deal with everything. You just can't imagine what we do.
The reason I even brought it up is because I have a book that we've made Book of the Month, and the woman was a beautiful stewardess, and she was a really a very big alcoholic, and also she was never diagnosed before with bipolar, and so between the two things, it's been terrible for her. She now is on many medications. She's not drinking. She goes to AA, but that bipolar is a very big issue.
It's very tough. Yes, it's very tough.
So I was just curious when I asked you that. Then you just
the thing
can't
is,
take them.
it's a sad thing. There are a lot of bipolar people. People don't realize, the general public doesn't realize how serious that is. But there are a lot of people. But that's very strong medicines that they take. And I mean, it can give you thoughts of suicide and everything else. And we're just not equipped medically to be honestly treat. Such as we have, we give unto you. And what we have is God. And we cocoon you in love, and we give you all the education about your addiction and how to deal with that when you're released and when you graduate. But we don't pretend that we know anything medically or have nurses or doctors. We just don't, or counselors. So we're a church.
Yeah, I understand that, and you certainly do so much. But I was just curious, since I had you here, I thought I would just respond on this. Okay, so you did tell us a lot, but now you have you always have exciting news, and I know you like to share it with our listening audience.
Yeah, I got to tell you about this. Now, I'm going to give you the upfront caveat. This is really, really, really premature, okay? Because this could take 6 months to a year to work out, but I'm so excited, I just like a little dog wagging its tail. I got to tell you.
You're a little boy. That's right, before Christmas.
I had a guy working on it. We have a board member, lives in South Florida, and she has a good girlfriend, a friend of hers, and she was one night talking about her husband working on his doctor's degree, and she's so excited what he's doing. He's running a halfway house, and he's working on a medical testing device to help test how where people are in their recovery process. And he has been using this on guys in the halfway house when they want to leave and go somewhere else. he's been testing them to see if they're ready to leave or not. And the short version of this is he straps them down just like easiest way to say it's like a lie detector test. It monitors your chest, your pulse rate, and all that stuff, and blood pressure. And what he does is he puts on one of these goggles on your head, on these what do they call them?
Well, it's when you go
the
to
vision, you go
to IMAX and they put these goggles on, right?
Yeah, but this is like virtual reality.
Yeah, virtual reality is what you're talking about. Yes.
So let's say for a guy, he has done heroin and cocaine and something like that. Well, what he'll do is he'll strap these guys down if they want to leave his place, and they'll put these virtual reality goggles on them, and they'll play a scene. And they will tell him, let's say a guy's shooting up, for example, and let's say heroin was made drug. He'll say, now this guy's doing heroin. And he will measure the bodily reaction to that visual thing of a guy doing heroin. If it's cocaine, he'll do that, whatever. And if heroin is main drug, and let's say cocaine was second, he'll mention both of them so he can measure the difference. Anyway, what he does is he measures the emotional reaction to that, seeing somebody shoot up with heroin. And he'll tell the guys whether or not they're ready to leave or not. And because of how they deal, or their body is emotionally dealing with that. Well, she told him about Faith Farm. She said, well, I'm a vice president of the board of Faith Farm. You ought to go talk to the director, Dean. So he came and I met with him about a week ago, and he's making a proposal to us. But what he wants to do, because we have such a large universe of people coming through the program, he believes that he can make this predictive on behavior. And of course, he wants to test some 28-day programs. He wants to look at somebody when they first are admitted, and then 28 days when they're leaving. But he believes that a faith-based program is a deeper, more powerful thing. So he wants to come to us and test when the guys enter the program, and then 28 days. Well, we're in negotiation. And I'm saying, now we got to provide a room with a certain temperature for his machines, and they've got to be able to pull guys out of the work program to come be tested. And it's just, there are a lot of details to work out. I was meeting with Judy this morning before I came down. I said, we've got a lot of questions that we have to work, but we both want this to happen. So I believe it's going to eventually happen. And what it'll do, what I expect it'll do, is it'll compare us at 28 days. It'll compare, for example, a faith-based initiative to just a pure medical initiative.
But is 28 days enough for you? I thought that you.
No, it's not. Our big change comes in after about 6 months.
That's what you said.
Because we build trust and stuff. So that's what I want to propose to him. I said, well, if we're going to be involved in this, I want you to. I want to test at the end of approximately 5.5 months, 6 months, when they go in to the half-a-day program, because they go to half-a-day classes in the morning and then their work project. And at the 6-month level, they go into a half-a-day of classes. Well, the biggest spiritual transformation happens. That's when we have them dig up the past and incidences, and they have to deal with fathers that weren't there, or deal with abuse, and they pray over them and ask for forgiveness, and it's a spiritual cleansing that takes place at the 6-month level. So that's where the big transformative life changes occur in Faith Farm. And so, and guys at the graduation will say, man, when I got to class 5, that changed everything, because it's just, they make them deal with their path from a spiritual perspective. It may be forgiving somebody who abused them. It may be forgiving a father that was never at a softball game or was non-existent in the home. It might be a verbal abuse from an uncle or a mother. Or it might be they might feel bad about a boss that they thought they were due for a promotion and they promoted somebody less qualified above them. There's just a lot of things that happen, or a death, an instant death of a family member, or sometimes a divorce, sometimes just a dramatic occurrence will tip people off the deep end, and they'll cause them to either use alcohol or drugs, and to enough that they're trying to anesthetize themselves and buffer their feelings and emotion. So I want him to be able to test after we get to the part where our life changes. And I also want him to test, just let's say the week before they're to graduate. Because, for example, Anita, we'll have a guy say, because we make them do an exit plan, and we a resume and the whole works right at the end. And some guys will say, I've had such a life change here, but I don't, I'm scared. I don't feel like I'm really ready to be released. Well, see, we can test that person and we can verify that, we believe, and say, no, you need to stay here. Or if the court says, well, they've graduated, we need them back now. No, we can show empirical evidence, physical evidence on why they should stay. So I believe that his goal is to make it predictive. My goal is to show whether somebody can be released or not, how they're going to act when we release. Because some people, they do marvelously. They start companies and employ, but some people don't. Some people are so fragile, they still just haven't gotten it. They need more spiritual input. They need to be in the Bible or prayer more. They need to be in our environment more, whatever it is. They just say, I'm not ready to leave. And so we have a space for advanced AS1 students to stay another year, get more spiritual input. We'll put them in semi-leadership positions and observe how they manage other students and whether or not they have really good management skills and leadership skills. And they can even go to AS2 the second year if they want, but that's the most we have. But see, we'll be able to have evidence if this works on this guy's doctorate degree, and it really works. It will not only be predictive, it'll compare a faith-based to another non-faith-based program. It'll compare how they've progressed through our system, whether or not they've really gotten their healing in our thing, or they're still are needy in terms of dealing with stuff. So if they do that before they go into Class 5, that'll enable our pastors and the people that are doing that deep spiritual work in that 6-month level. It'll give them insights to know that they're not, and they'll do it afterwards, and it'll show the change. And so I'm so excited about this. It's going to require, the guy's trying to get a grant for his doctorate degree to do this because it involves buying equipment and setting up a regimen and stuff to get empirical evidence that he can put in his doctoral dissertation. So it's going to be a lot of work. But the neat thing about Faith Farm is that we only have 445 beds, but we take in over 600 people a year because not everybody stays. They walk out. So there's a certain element that stays, and then there's a turnover. About 25 to 38% graduate, and the rest is a constant turnover of people that come in and leave for whatever reason. And so it's just going to be, I'm so excited because, see, the doctors, when you're in one of these other recovery programs, you've got a psychologist or a psychiatrist who's doing tests, and he's got all these empirical medical measurements he can give hard information on. Well, ours is a way more subtle than that. A spiritual change is it's not a very quantifiable. I can't put it on a chart, and so to be able to have some empirical proof that our stuff works like we know it does, it's going to be wonderful. I'm so excited about it.
I know, and I'm very happy for you because it does seem very right. Let me tell everybody, you've been listening to someone who could be anything. He is so enthusiastic. I didn't want to interrupt him because he's on such a high. But it's Dean Webb, and he's the executive director of Faith Farm Ministries. And what we want you to do is, if you can donate any money, because things like this, it does take money. But you can donate money over there at faithfarm.org. That's the website. You, of course, can always go there and find things that you want to buy at their thrift shops. You can, of course, donate things that they will sell at their thrift shop, but they have 3 locations. So all you have to do is just go on their website. I think that's the best thing to do, and that's faithfarm.org, and then you can find the location you want to call. But they are certainly, they should win an Academy Award if there were such a something because they do wonderful things, and I'm always privileged to go to graduations and homecomings and all sorts of things, and I really am happy that this has happened for you. I want you to go back, though, when you were saying this. So what if they did try at 28 days and didn't get into where they've now had religion? What happens in the first 28 days?
Well, you mean at our place? They're just going through orientation. We're teaching about the rules of the program because they, here are the rules. They go over the thing that we have zero tolerance policy and why. We go over the rules that they've got to be in good behavior because we've got our staff members and their wives and kids living on campus. I mean, the people that are ministering with them and working with them also live there like they do. So we go through all the rules, and when they've got to do in church, we go over the rules about if you don't have a high school diploma, here's when you work on your GED to get that. And we tell them that they've got a chance to sit for up to 9 hours of college credit when they get to the end of the program to get college credits. And so we just go over all the program. A lot of people say, well, I got to work, Monday through Saturday. This is a work project. We go over the fact that we view it as a positive thing because the people that are setting alarm clocks and going to work while they're in our program, that's who they're going to be competing with when they get out and we get them a job and they go out, and they're going to be able to merge right in there, and they're not going to be at a disadvantage because a lot of addicts and alcoholics, they're not necessarily working. I mean, they're laying around, they're juking, they're getting drug money, doing all sorts of things to get their next fix, and it's not a regimen of work. And so we tell them that the work program, don't view it as negative, view it as positive, that they're going to be in the system and they're going to be up to speed by the time they graduate.
So probably if we turned the clock back 30 years ago, you'd be talking about alcoholics. Now you talked a lot about drugs. What is the ratio that you are finding of alcoholism and drugs?
A lot of times, the first 20 years of Faith Farm, it was all alcohol. I mean, that's all it was. The next 20 years, you added all the street recreational drugs, heroin and cocaine and all that to the alcohol. And then the last 20 years, believe it or not, has been prescriptive drugs. People get addicted when they have an auto accident and they have pain. They get OxyContin and stuff, and they get a prescription, and then they can't get off of the thing, and they're hooked, and then become an addict. So it's all kind of mixed in together. We get very few. We do. I don't know what the percentage is, but we get more people that have progressed from alcohol into drugs, and I get upset about the marijuana thing. I've seen the results of medical marijuana, what it can do, but I also know that it's a gateway drug for people starting. The beer and the marijuana, that's how people start drinking, and that's how they start wanting something more powerful in terms of drugs. And so to me, marijuana is a gateway drug. I don't like the fact that we want to legalize it. I understand medically. I've seen actual footage of somebody that's got physical problems, and within 5 minutes, the shakes and the Parkinson's just totally goes away with a particular strain of marijuana. So I believe medically there's a place for it because I've seen the evidence of what that does. And when my first wife was dying of cancer, they tried to get her to take marijuana. They said because it would ease her pain and calm her down. She didn't want to use that, so she didn't do it. But even back then, 25 years ago, they had stuff available, and now it's been refined, and there are companies in Canada that do really research on all the different base types of marijuana for a particular solution medically. But I'm not necessarily opposed to that. I can see the benefit, but just recreationally, I think it's going to dumb down our country. It's just going to take we're the strongest, most driven country in terms of work ethics and everything else. I mean, if you go to Europe, you get a job, the day you get your job full time, you automatically are credited with 6 weeks paid vacation. Well, man, you got to work a long time in the United States to get 6 weeks paid vacation.
But don't you feel people who are on marijuana, if it weren't marijuana, it'd be something else? I mean, aren't they searching for something anyway? So
they are, but it's for some people that's enough. For some people, it makes them want more. So
no, but I just meant,
it's
so
all
why?
over.
Yeah, I mean, some
And there
people,
are functioning people. I wouldn't deny that there are people that smoke recreationally, and it doesn't appear to affect them. But I know from all sorts of drugs that some people are affected greatly, and some people are not.
But I've been concerned that here we've stopped cigarettes. Is when you're smoking, aren't you also taking in nicotine of some sort of? Isn't it going to do something
On the marijuana?
Yeah.
Well, now they got it so they put it in brownies so you eat it.
But isn't it?
But you can smoke it, too.
So I see. So it's still okay. Because I'm so happy that now most people
Don't
aren't
smoke in
smoking, and
restaurants
now
and
we're
stuff.
doing.
You can taste the food.
Right. So anyway, but I guess what you answered though is mostly it's not the alcoholics that made Faith Farm what it is today. It's so many other drugs. Now, do many of the people do everything?
Yeah.
They do the drugs. They do the
Yeah.
alcohol. and
Typically,
everything.
the kids that start really young, like in high school, age 12, 14, it's all alcohol, usually beer blasts and all that stuff. And then somewhere somebody will give them a reefer, and that's an euphoric feeling. And then they get on liking marijuana. And then as they get more, they want something. Somebody will introduce them, say, well, you ought to try cocaine, or you ought to try heroin or something. And they introduce them, and it's a progressive thing. And eventually they get hooked and they hit bottom.
It's so out of my life that I always stretch
I know,
to try
me
to
too.
understand. I
Yeah,
know,
me
but
too.
you certainly have a lot of experience with it. Thank you, Dean, for coming in and for always giving us so much. So it's good for people to understand what's going out there, and that there is a place. There really is a place here in South Florida. We're so lucky to have Faith Farm. So go to faithfarm.org, and thank you so much, Dean.
Thank you for having me. I love talking about things.